Welcome to the Roundtable Consult. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Williams, and I'm joined by my adequate co-host, Attorney Sonia Madison. How you doing in all your adequacy?
Back during the Biden administration, I might have thought it as a dig, but apparently mediocrity is is
It's in now.
the
It's
goalpost,
desirable.
right? I
You
mean,
are absolutely right. You know what? If you're even adequate, it makes you very attractive these days. The
you know.
anti-DEI thing. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Jeez.
Oh man. But yeah, I've made it through some storms this past week and I am
Praise the
still
Lord.
here. We'll see. How about you? How was your week?
Praise the Lord. Hey, he brought us through. Hallelujah. I still have yet miles to go before I rest. So,
Well, all of us do because apparently P. Hexeth is not making life easy with all these signal chat breaches. I just
oh, yes.
I just don't understand to some degree what the end game is. Every time I think it's one thing, I completely am blindsided. And so I don't know about you, but I don't know to some degree how you teach the next generation or where you go from here.
Well, that's you're teaching them, whether you try to or not. And the question is what are you teaching them? What are we teaching them? And I'll tell you one thing: we're getting big lessons in the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution. That's the one thing I can say about Donald Trump is that we are learning and investigating all kinds of things that were in the law that we were like, wow, we never really paid attention to that, but now we should actually pay attention to these types of things. So he's given us all the civics lessons, and for that, I thank you, DJ. Thank you.
Well, you're more optimistic than I am because I don't think people are taking this as an opportunity to go learn about what's in the law. I think they're just like, sounds good. He mentioned the law that works for me, so then he must be right. And so, and it's interesting enough, and I know we'll get into it even further, but I know we talked about this a couple of episodes ago, the Alien Enemies Act, and how it hadn't been used since World War II after and during that time it was pretty much used under racial pretenses against Japanese Americans, considering that we were at war with, I want to say, what, back in World War One.
And would it be used under any other pretense now?
Well, and that's again, if we're studying history, then kudos to you guys. Give credit to Donald Trump that he has introduced an act that honestly wasn't even taught in law school because it's only been used 3 times, and I'm sure it was not foreseen to be used again. Um, so if you have taken it on, kudos. If you're just like, no, as I heard him articulate something, so it sounds about right, then yeah, we're you're not being taught the way I would prefer you be taught. Because like you
Oh,
said, you're being taught, but not in
yeah.
the manner that makes you an informed person.
Mm. Well, interesting. So before we talk about anything stressful or difficult or Donald Trump related, what is one good thing that has happened for you this week?
I need to start thinking more about some of the good things. I will say, last Sunday, because I consider Sunday to be the first part of the week, I had a really good time hanging out with family for Easter and just again reflecting on Jesus' resurrection and just, as much as we talk about some of the negative things that are going on, and we will continue to, we're still here, we're still blessed, and we're still able to talk about it for the time being because we know in Russia people get censored for what we're doing, and we are seeing that play out. And so, I am grateful for Jesus' sacrifice and for the fact that I still have employment and I still have family and friends and I still have a savior that is like, listen, Sonia, you'll be okay.
Chill. You ever heard Jesus tell you to chill?
I've never
Chill,
heard him
girl.
say chill.
You ever heard him chill? It's the same thing he says, peace be still. That's the same thing as
That's
chill.
the same thing.
But that is a good observation, especially as we celebrated this past week the resurrection of our Lord and Savior. I was thinking, I said, what must the disciples have been thinking about during or doing during that time when Jesus was in the grave. A lot of times we go on and we focus, yeah, while Jesus was dead for those 3 days, he warred in hell on our behalf. But if you're above ground, and if you're still living in the mortal realm, what must you be thinking at that time? Because you have to say, well, we had all our hopes in this person who was going to come in and set us free, and now he died a shameful and a humiliating death. I mean, he was spit upon. The one that we held as a king was so demeaned and so belittled, diminished. Um, did we misplace our faith? Have we now put ourselves in harm's way of suffering a similar fate? So many of them retreated in fear, saying, my own life might be in jeopardy now. And now I guess maybe we just resign to the oppressive regime of the Roman Empire because we really have no more hope until the next hope comes along. So it made me think, I said, when Jesus seems to be, or when the Lord seems to be quiet on the earth, what's really happening behind the scenes? And I think he's really doing some stuff in another realm, making preparation for his triumphant return. And so I'm encouraged a lot of times when I start seeing it, and not discouraged mostly when it seems like the church or God is doing nothing. I think David probably said it in a couple of Psalms. He would get frustrated and saying, why does it seem like the evil always prevails? And he had to remind himself, quiet yourself, soul, be still, soul, and command your soul to bless God, knowing that God will is still working in the background, still working in the spirit realm, which can't be seen, to bring about an eventual result that's going to be for our good. And so I'm excited about that. I get encouraged by it. I understand how easy it is to get discouraged. I was watching Conclave even earlier. Did you watch the movie?
I did see the movie
And so
a while ago, but yeah.
yeah, no. Well, with the death of the Pope, we have
Yeah, I
to
know. I meant to say I
we
know
have
why
to
you now
revive
saw
it.
it, but
But when you start looking at that, you start saying, man, there's politics in everything. And people get so fearful about what may happen when it seems like evil is prevailing. And all we really have to do is hold fast to the faith that Jesus knew what was going to happen to him. He knows what's going to happen to this world. And if we actually read his word, we can find out what's going to happen in this world too. But we can take heart because he told us, hey, these things are going to happen. But understand, I've overcome. He said, in this world, you have tribulations, but take heart. I've overcome them all. And so I have to keep reminding myself about that this week. When I start looking at how Jesus was treated, he was treated with distorted justice as well.
well, I mean, you're probably again more optimistic than mine because I see because I hear that and I hear what I hear or interpret, as you like to say, Sonya's interpretation is keep your eyes on eternal things, because this world will be destroyed and it's not paradise, it's never meant to be. And so to try to find peace in the world is to constantly turn around and chase your tail.
You've
And
been
so
listening.
yeah, well, yeah, but you're phrasing it as, oh, things will work out. And I'm like, I'm phrasing it as, yeah, eternally. But
That's
our
all that matters,
our
right?
mortal in the meantime
If
are
this earthly tabernacle should pass away, we have for us a house not made with hands. So that's what we always have to have hope for. That's the whole basis of Christianity.
but there are a lot of people that are happy at these past couple of days following the NFL draft. I know you don't keep up with sports too much, but the NFL draft was going on, I think started Thursday and it continues on. And
Titans
a
are
lot of
happy.
people,
Titans are
there are a
happy.
lot of, yeah. And then there are some people that are not so happy. And one of those people is Deion Sanders. It's a little surprising because I think a lot of people predicted that his son, Shador, would go in the first round. At least, and I even thought, he would go in the first round. There were a couple of schools that were looking for quarterbacks, Tennessee being one of them that turned him down twice, I want to say. Um, and yet he remains undrafted. And so I don't know if you know Skip Bayless, but he did a whole rant that he posted on Twitter. And I'm not even on Twitter, but someone sent it to me. And so I'm going to use his words to explain it. In that way, if people are like, oh, Sonny's always talking about race, this was Skip. This was not science word. This is Skip's words, and he's a white man. And he says that I mean he says, perhaps race played a role, but it definitely seems like a campaign against Deion Sanders because he has so much influence in this league and in the sport, and it seems as if owners or people are trying to put him in his place. So, I again, his words, not mine, and maybe some food for thought. But it is unfortunate that if that is the case, that his son is being used as a pawn in the game of, I guess, de-elevating Sanders, Deion Sanders.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I heard that I heard similar things, particularly as it related to race down here in Nashville, where they're like, Nashville's not ready. I had a couple friends I was talking to this week. They were like, Nashville's not ready for a black quarterback, and we'll see what happens now.
I mean, we had Steve McNair, right? Wasn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah, but
And he took y'all almost. I mean, you almost won, almost
that's
won the Super Bowl.
almost, almost. Well, maybe we should say for another one, but I don't know. Hey, I this is not my or well, he fell into his own troubles right there, right? I mean, maybe they just soured him.
Well, post the post retirement, yes, he did. But that's the topic for another day because
Yeah.
and I guess easing on to that, Shannon Sharp, post retirement trouble, right?
Hey, this is not just post retirement. This is coming after his big ESPN deal, though, right? Didn't he have a huge?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and was probably negotiating some other things as well. And
on the come up.
well, and he, to some degree, I guess, depending on how far up you have to come. I mean, he was already up, but I guess he could be even higher up.
Mhm.
But for those that don't know, he is being sued. I think a $50 million lawsuit against him, claiming sexual assault and some other allegations. And from initially, from the news reports, they initially was trying to negotiate a settlement, and I want to say she turned down 10 mil. Again, this is what's being reported. But since the lawsuit has been filed, Shannon Sharp has come out and responded with text messages of his own, claiming that, they had a consensual relationship and she's just using this to shake him down for more money. He's also going against the lawyer because the lawyer is a lawyer that has gone after P. Diddy, he's gone after Jay-Z, and his lawsuit against Jay-Z was later dismissed. And so he's claiming he's just going after black men, which I always find it so interesting when black men bring the race card, even though they're dating all these non-black people. But anyways,
He's
and
still black,
I mean, you want to pick and choose when that means something.
and you become even a bigger target when you do that, though. So you
That's
just
what
have
I
no
say. You
sympathy.
want to pick
You
and choose
just
when that means something.
you just have no sympathy for them when they do.
I mean, again, I do. Part of the thing, and because a lot of also black men are making fun of Shannon Sharp. One, because I mean, that this is not only is this a white or non-black woman. I'm not sure what her race is exactly, but the pictures show that she's not black. A non-black woman who is 19 years old is the one making the allegation. So he's getting a lot of jokes from black people, black men in particular, because I want to say in the past he's also made fun of, I want to say, Donna Rollins and other people that's come on the show that have been caught with younger women. And he's also, of course, asked about interracial dating, made that a topic. And so, and he's been very vocal about his inability to be monogamous. So, um, it's going to be interesting to see his play out. He has since, I guess, taken a leave from ESPN and is planning on coming back by the NFL season. But I'm sure that will depend on how this plays out.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on it, though?
I mean,
You
of course.
you wait till the evidence come out. Okay, that's fine. I got you.
There's
Other than the fact that he shouldn't have been dating
he
outside
should
his
right. He
race,
should
we
not have
understand.
been well, as well as a 19-year-old. And it is funny, one of the clips that has gone viral is Monique telling him, "You need to stay away from these young girls." um,
Action.
I mean, and that's one thing he does need to reconcile with is hey, and I say this also not just about non-black or age, but when you realize you have so much to lose and yet
Mm,
you make these poor, reckless decisions with people who don't have nearly the same amount of stake, to some degree, it's like you were just waiting for this avalanche to come down on you. And again, that's not to justify if what she's saying is false, because I don't like this idea that we don't necessarily believe women or believe someone who says that they've been sexually assaulted. Whether I would, of course, prefer that she would have used the criminal system to make these claims versus a civil suit, because it does to some degree question a little bit more. But nonetheless, I am not here to say whether or not she's telling the truth or not. That should be definitely something played out in court. But if you're asking my thoughts in terms of just initially, my initial thought was, Shannon, if you knew you had this much to lose, why are you putting yourself in these situations to lose it?
Yeah. Whoever said two heads are better than one didn't know men very well.
I know.
It's absolutely crazy. But hey, we all are subject. It just amazes me when you start thinking about how people jeopardize um, uncommon opportunity that comes across there. That's It's almost like we've got a built-in self-destruct button that once we know that we're on the way to some great success, or maybe we're in the middle of great success, that something just keeps us from wanting to stay in that position. And I don't know, maybe that's just the nature of humanity, the nature of humanness. And maybe I'll never know about it just because I'll never have that type of wealth. But I'm not sure
Well,
that I
you,
ever
you
really
have a wife
attempted.
that will also make sure to not only keep you humble, but also to keep you protected, because to some degree, I'm not saying that they are, like you say, self-destructive and trying to destroy, but I am also saying you're not setting up boundaries to protect what God has blessed you with. And I know we may have talked about this before, maybe I talked about this with other family members. They do have a belief that men are meant to have a helpmate.
Mhm.
There are some men that just strongly believe that yes, men cannot prosper or at least protect themselves in their prosperity without that helpmate. And Shannon Sharp has been one of those that's adamant against, hey, I don't want to get married, and adamant against monogamous. And to some degree, I'm not saying that, don't go marry just for the sake of getting married. But at the same time, I am saying you need to make sure to protect what you're building. Otherwise, like you said earlier, the evil that you do will ring a lot louder than the good.
Yeah, makes you a target for extortion. I mean, bottom line, you're now a target for extortion. So I think money makes you a target, but then also celebrity, fame,
Same, yeah.
influence, power. All these things make you targets for people who actually just really want to see your demise at some point. And you've got a group of people who will, once you see that, whether it's based off of race or whatever, they'll make you uh, their next victim of extortion. Now, sometimes that's with romantic relationships, other times it's with political
And
relationships.
to be clear, because if he did wrong, then he should be punished. So we are not saying that she is capitalizing on a false story. That is for the
Kobe,
courts to determine.
Kobe Bryant got out of it though, didn't
He settled.
he?
And subsequent to, after he settled, then the criminal, because I think it was a criminal charge against him, and then the witness refused to testify. Not that you really can, but you don't want to have a hostile victim taking the stand.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, I want to make sure it's clear. We are not saying that he is being extorted by a false
I'm saying it.
story.
I'm not saying it's false story. I'm not saying it could still be extorted, whether they're telling the truth or not, and
Oh,
whether
because
there's
if
shades
you
of
if you harm someone, I mean that's why the court is there. If you harm someone, then you need to pay damage for that harm. So, I mean, extortion is illegal. So that's why,
I can
And so
you can harm a willing participant. And
those
then
are
the
Mark's
willing
words. Because if it's a consensual relationship.
you can, because there's a thing called buyer's remorse. There's a thing about, afterwards you're like, hey, I hadn't planned on that. I hadn't anticipated that. I wish I had, because for a while with the whole Me Too movement, there was this whole issue where guys were, uh, if they even tried to coerce a woman into a sexual or romantic relationship or some type of sexual encounter, coerce her, entice her. Let me say even entice her. You almost had to make it like a legal transaction. You and I agreed to engage sexually in this regard. Otherwise, if you said no the first time and I kissed you differently, and then eventually you caved in, then I could be arrested, charged for, assault, sexual assault. And I think it probably did go a little bit further, too far before, but maybe that pendulum is now equalizing a little bit.
Well, maybe we also in teaching, since you're saying we're all being taught, so let's be taught that no means no. And then not, oh, well, let me go wait until she is bleeding or he is, fighting
Right.
against me for it to mean no.
I will say that. I will agree with that. I will also agree that women need to know that no means no as well. Because no doesn't mean convince me. I would just want you to convince me. Because there are a lot of women who use no as, hey, I really just want you to, I just
I
want
wouldn't say a
proof
lot.
or
There are some
pursuit.
women,
Well, some
some
women,
women, okay.
okay. When you think about the grand scheme of people, there are 330 million people in America and 160 million women. Okay,
And yet there's a
so
history of abuse against women. And so that's why
there is,
I don't
and
want to
there's no
diminish
just
that.
there's. I don't want to diminish that at all either. But I'm saying when we're teaching the lessons, let's teach the lessons from both sides. Women, because what'll happen is a woman will be very much into a man and still play games about just because she wants to be pursued, and and even as I say that, that sounds kind of creepy at this point because you're like, yeah, she wanted it. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the reality is that there are some women who will play what we call hard to get because they like the pursuit. And the issue now today is people need to not try to play those pursuit games. If you're interested in somebody, be honest with them about it. I don't think there's any harm with that. And then say, I'm really interested in you, but I like this cat and mouse game that we play. So
And then when I'm not, I'm going to say no. And I need you to walk away.
let your yays be yay and your nays be nay, and then we'll be in good shape.
Well,
But
speaking of trying to take advantage of women, we got to go talk about Trump trying to convince women to have babies with the $5,000. I mean, again, can we not just laugh at the stupidity of that, or are we just is that really something that should have been considered policy for
it's half of the things that he's
real?
contemplated should have been considered policy. I mean, as an answer right in of itself. But yeah,
But there are people defending this and saying, "Oh, that's works for women. I mean, he's giving out money." And I'm just like, are we seriously not only assessing the fact that kids are expensive and $5,000, I mean, you're in the medical profession, that won't even pay for your surgery.
it's,
You know?
it's estimate. I think it was like $360,000 is estimated to raise a child to the age of 18. $360,000.
But secondly, are we just done trying to promote and encourage family? Are we just done trying to convince men to show themselves to be providers so that women feel safe in having children? Or is that part of the lesson on that we're teaching over? We're just gonna jump straight into,
I don't
listen,
see the
women, I'll
connection
make it
there.
easy for you to go get IVF and have these kids by yourself.
I don't see the connection there. I don't know that he was advertising for fatherless children though. I didn't get that from there,
Did you
but
get that he was advertising for families or just for women having children? I mean, because there
you know,
you can't do like that's what I'm saying. Are we done advocating for families? Just because he also mentioned making it easier for fertility options, so
right.
IVF and all the stuff, all the things that women can do without having a father present.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that sounds like that was a far left. That was what the far left was accused of, destruction of the nuclear family. And so for a period of time, that was ammunition against the left, lodged by those on the right. And so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that I'm sure that his conservative supporters, at least, would not be advocating for that because many of them wouldn't be advocating for IVF, period, because they want all the embryos killed. basically, and no longer made. So
I don't know if they want them killed as they want them used.
yeah, maybe true.
Because that was part of the issue over in Alabama was whether or
Mhm.
not killing that embryo was actually murder, right?
Yeah, or not made
Anyways,
in the first place. So
well, hopefully, I mean, not hopefully, that surely will not go too far. But again, sometimes I do wonder if he says this to distract from the fact that, again, we've got Russia and Ukraine, and he's trying to convince Ukraine to settle for this deal in which Russia takes, what was it, Crimea or one of the big cities and Ukraine is not having it. And so now they're saying, oh, Ukraine is the bad guy in this, which again is so interesting to hear that shift even in foreign affairs. I mean, previous administration was all we've got to support Ukraine. We can't have Putin taking over. And now it's well, let's negotiate this deal where we give Putin a percentage of what he wants.
well, you know what prompts all of this is that the U.S. does not have enough citizens to actually provide all of the resources and goods and services that the current number of U.S. citizens actually consume, because we're a highly consuming group of people or nation. And I don't think any other nation really consumes per capita as much as the US does. And so you got other countries like India with billions of people and China, billions of workers. And those number of workers can produce a whole lot of things. And so as we start now seeing with the tariff wars, the number of people who you have in your country matters. And so now they're like, hey, we need to start having more people, preferably of the white variety. And and I
Mark said it, not me.
no, I'm saying that's
Yeah,
what his thinking is. I'm saying
yeah,
preferably
yeah.
of the white variety,
I
but
don't disagree with
yeah,
it.
because they're the ones with the declining birth rate more than anything. I mean, you look at the number of Hispanics. The birth rate of Hispanics is probably, I think, the highest in in this country, and then followed, I think, by Black people. And then you look at the birth rate of white people; it's actually declining. It's been substantially declining, and is responsible for the bulk of the decline in population, or at least birth rate in the United States. So I saw this other, and I don't know how true this is. I kept forgetting to investigate it, but there's this whole push, or at least thought, that we can develop artificial wombs. And so I saw a video of a room full of these little, almost incubators, but they're artificial wombs where you can actually grow thousands of babies in one room. And the thought was that, hey, we'll just start making babies in vitro, not just fertilizing them in vitro, but actually causing them to gestate in vitro. And then you come in, hey, I want this one right here. And then the sad part about it is that our technology is nearing the point where you can actually genetically engineer children, and you can get children to be as smart as you want to have. Maybe take some genes from an eagle and give somebody perfect vision, extreme a human with that type of vision, so that you actually start creating superhumans. And so all of this stuff sounds like science fiction, but I think invention occurs first in the minds of creatives, and then eventually the techno geeks catch up with it and find out how to make it happen.
Well, for those that are worried, am I going to be able to rely on my Social Security when I get older? Perhaps you may want to look more towards into your pensions or retirement plans, because that, like you said, I mean, they've already been talking about trying to defund that anyways. But like you said, I mean, but some of that I just wish they would focus on the cost of living. I mean, you increase in tariffs, and this tariff war is also not helping us be able to live. I mean, I don't care how much more people you put in on the in the country, if jobs are still going to be scarce because AI is taking over, or if the cost of living remains high that people can't afford housing, then you're just going to have more people and still less, money coming in, still a deficiency. And so, but I guess, he's wanted to protect the billionaires. And so that's why I've said all along, if it's going to be even harder if you don't have any generational wealth. So we've got to start consuming more responsibly as well.
So let's talk about move more toward our topic here, and we start talking about justice and it being distorted. And a lot of times when we mention the word justice now, we always think about law, but justice is beyond just law. It's basically just behavior or treatment, meaning that it's being treated equally, being treated fairly, being treated reasonably. And so, even as you mentioned, this whole portion, this notion about the Social Security possibly not being there, a lot of people look at that as entitlements, and that's not an entitlement. That's something that the people have paid for, and throughout their entire careers, and the prospect of that not being available to somebody when they get ready to retire, especially as I get closer to retirement age, I'm like, this isn't fair. This isn't just. But how do you wind up justifying and or rationalizing this unfair type of treatment? And it's not just with regard to Social Security, it's even in terms of what the job mark outlook looks like, as you mentioned with the AI, artificial intelligence is now coming into play, where hey, like I think we mentioned it before that AI is an incredible tool for us. And as a business person, as an entrepreneur, I would love to incorporate AI
You
into
already
my
do. I'm sure
practice.
you incorporate it in your payroll. I'm sure you incorporate it
No,
in
all
your
that's done.
email. So right,
No,
right.
no,
In your
all of that's done
communications,
by
right.
humans. All of that's done by humans. I want it all done by a computer. Why? Because it's much more efficient. It's much more cost effective from a capitalism standpoint, where my profits get better. I thought one of the things I always used to say is that business has no compassion. I do, but business has no compassion. This past week, I realized something else in addition to that. And it says business has no loyalty other than to profits. And so when people are no longer profitable to you, they're dismissed. And, they're substituted for something else that becomes more profitable for me. There's no justice in that. There's no fairness in how people are treated when they are no longer profitable to them. And I think capitalism sort of feeds that type of extortion and distortion of type of justices that we see.
Well, I want to challenge the notion that by virtue of me not getting this money that I've put into this is unjust. And the reason why I say is when we look at Social Security, it does not simply go to people who are retired, but it goes to help people who are disabled. It goes to help people who are children. It goes to so many services. And it also goes to people who haven't put in money into it at all, if they're able to show meet some eligibility requirements. And as Christians, I'd imagine to some degree we consider that just, and that we are using our resources to help those that are less fortunate. And so then this idea that, oh, well, it's now not just because I can't use it. I would challenge then how we're defining just. And I imagine to some degree when God said Jesus, vengeance is mine, said the Lord, there's the understanding that, hey, only I know what is just. and you have to trust and rest in that. Um, but I would more so, and I mean, maybe this is you probably look at the glass half full and I'm back to the half empty. I more so look at the oppression part and say, yeah, that is completely unjust. So I'm more so defining what's unjust versus what may be just. And so then when I think about again what Trump is doing, even with the Aliens Enemies Act, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people that will say, oh, that act is just because, and for those that don't know, what is essentially saying is, hey, during war times, we have the capacity to take punishment against people, particularly people who are of naturalization to those countries by which we're fighting. So when if we're going back to the three times that is used, at least two of those times it was against those individuals who are from those countries that which we were fighting against. People will probably say that's just. Whereas I would say that is completely unjust. Here we have citizens, or at least people who are legally authorized to be in America. And yet, because we're fighting against a country by which they're born, we are going to then say, hey, I can then definitely deport you or put some type of harm on you. And we've also seen that it was used against individuals by which we weren't fighting. We were not fighting against Japan. Yet we used that statute to put them in concentration camps because we felt like, hey, they are now taking industrial jobs by which takes from us. And I think that became the pillar of Trump's even campaign. Hey, it is unjust that this person gets to work by far much lower than minimum wage for a job that I would even want to work for. But it's still unjust that they get to work for it. And so I want to take harm out on them. And so when I look at this extortion, because I don't even know, if we were talking about some of the people who use money to make their influence. Because I would argue the fact that Jeff Bezos, writer of Washington Post, used his influence to prevent an opinion article from coming out. I'm sure some people will say, hey, that was just because he's the owner. Whereas I would say, I would not say that was just because it's supposed to be a newspaper by which First Amendment free speech, we are here articulating the news, and that is something that they have done every 4 years. And now you're using your influence to silence someone. I would say that that was unjust. And so, this idea that just should be limited to, oh, what's equal or what's fair, I think those two terms are too complicated, particularly because this world or this country was built on the backs of slaves. That the history of racism still remains so steep
We
that
can't
people,
get an episode without it.
you can't. I mean, we're talking about justice and fairness. I mean, even the judicial system, the court system, the system of the police was built for the purpose of capturing slaves, and then subsequently built for the purpose of putting prisons together so that free labor can still happen. If we can't ignore that history, but then say, but justice is just limited to, hey, so long as I have the opportunity to do what someone else does, then that's just. Because I just don't think that one, as soon as you're born into this world, immediately there's a separation there, whether that's by your race, whether that's by you've got two parents, whether that's by virtue of how much wealth you're born into, you are immediately at an advantage. And we can't wipe that away. So then it's hard to determine what becomes just and fair by virtue of these, intangibles that people have embraced.
So you bring up an interesting point. So then justice is relative. It's relative to our ambition. It's relative to our aspiration. Or should there be a standard about what justice is? I listened to a commentary this past week, really talking about the exportation of illegal immigrants without due process. And somebody actually, it was a conservative that was saying this, and I almost was persuaded by what he was saying.
Almost.
I might have been persuaded.
Okay.
I haven't figured out, so I'm waiting for you to dissuade me of this.
Okay.
I'm counting on you,
I want to
son.
dissuade you
Counting on
against not having due process. Let's see.
you. So there are U.S. citizens clearly are entitled to a due process by law before any type of conviction or
We'll
judgment
see
is
how
made
long
about them.
we'll see how long that survives.
Yeah, if you're of a certain
Because again,
skin
going back to
pigment.
this act, Japanese American citizens that were captured under that act, and no one like batted an eye. And so,
So today, at least, citizens are entitled to due process by law. And then any person who is in the United States with a legal purpose, whether that's through a visa, whether it's a tourist visa
school
or
visa,
work
student
visa,
visa, yeah.
whatever it is, or if you actually have been a naturalized citizen, whatever, those people belong here, supposedly. The words I'm going to use because it's inflammatory.
Since
You don't
the
belong
due
here, boy.
process and all
So
right.
people who belong here, illegally belong here, are entitled to due process,
Or should
but
be, should be.
should be entitled to due process. Um, but what about the people who cross the border illegally and they are apprehended and you cannot provide any evidence of your right to be in this country? Do you really need a due process in order to ship them back out? And this is a challenge question because if you look at it from a legal standpoint, then you would say, yes, that would be just to immediately discharge them and deport them. If you look at it from a humane standpoint, to discharge them and deport them without any consideration, whether it's a legal due process or not, without any consideration of what you're putting them back into, then I think from a Christian standpoint, maybe that's not just because, and maybe that's the standard that we're being held to, not just by not by the law, but being held accountable to by God's judgment and saying, when I think about when Jesus said, he said, when did we see you naked and clothed you? When was it that we saw you hungry and fed you? When was it that we visited you in the prisons? He said, when you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. And so when I support deportation of someone, even though the fact that they're here illegally, partly out of their desperation to escape what they were coming from, when they are immediately deported with no regard to what you're sending them back to, I wonder, does God view that as just?
Well, first of all, let's talk about what is due process because you said, hey, if they have a right to be here, well, for you to determine that, you got to give them an opportunity to show, hey, this is why I'm here. And so when you deport them immediately, you don't even get to determine if, hey, was there actually a legal means by which you came here? But I would also say, and maybe to some degree, we got to get out of what's actually going on because what's actually going on is people are coming here perhaps with the legal purpose. And their hearings are being set so far out that I think I know we at least one, he came, I want to say 2019, his hearing wasn't set till 2027. And so during that time, he has subsequently gotten deported. Now, he probably set that hearing because he knew, hey, I've got my papers or I've got at least a showing that I meet this criteria. But if you're so quick to, oh, no, immediate deportation because we don't have the capacity to give you the opportunity to show us immediately, then I would say, hey, that's just the problem. No one's getting due process, and there's no determination of whether someone's here legally or not, because you're not giving them an opportunity to show accordingly. But let's say, for the purpose of your question, you've given at least some minimum opportunity to show, hey, either there's a war going on, or there's a statute for asylum, or you've got some job purpose or whatever. And we determined that, yeah, we've heard you, but no, that's not sufficient enough. I'm not suggesting that that should go similar to what we would do here and have an appellate hearing and get it all the way up to the Supreme Court. I'm definitely not suggesting that. I do think at some point someone's got to make the decision to say, hey, I've heard you. It's not satisfied. You should now be deported, or you may now be deported. And I'm not doubting that there is a problem. And in fact, I affirm there is a problem when it comes to our immigration system. We do need better reform, but to me, that reform should be focused on better systems and processes for determining someone's legal status versus, hey, we just deport you off top, unless this country is saying, hey, we can make some trade of some sort, because that's what Trump is all about, this business deal that would afford a greater opportunity for our country to have you here than not. And I think a lot of times, again, when we're looking at legal status, and like you said, when it comes to your visas, we're saying that to say, hey, we get a benefit off you. So yeah, come in. And that to me is harmful when we're talking about just, because then you're making it seem like what just determines my benefit from it. And I don't know if that should be the metric because again, we start off at a disadvantage. And like you said, if we don't help those that are least, and not even realizing that helping the least does help us, but even if we don't see that direct connection and then we automatically say then it's not just, then I don't think we're any better off than even the Trumps of the world if it's always got to be a selfish motive.
So do you think that someone who crosses the border illegally, other than a normal border crossing checkpoint, and is
Whatever that is these
apprehended?
days. And that's
Yeah.
the problem. There are, because again, you have Trump say even these Haitian immigrants in Ohio should be deported.
I get that, but that's the question that I'm asking here is those persons who clearly crossed the border illegally have no documentation about their being here, awaiting asylum, or anything else like that. Should those people be afforded a due process other than show me your paper, what evidence you have that you belong here
Well, that's what I say. It's
legally?
complicated as when you say clearly illegally. I don't know what's clearly illegally anymore. I don't.
Well, illegal crossing of the border is when you cross at some point. If you're an immigrant and you cross into this country at a point other than the checkpoints that are designated for it, anything other than, I mean, you sounded like now the left. You say, I don't know what a woman is. I don't know what a
No,
woman
I'm not sounding like that at all. And even although there's, it was funny. I don't want to sidetrack, but it was funny with that because I hate when people put so much emphasis on characteristics versus your biological. But anyways, going back to your question, the reason why I say I don't know what's clearly illegal anymore is because I mean there are so many countries that are at war. And there's so much third war and poverty going on. And I remember back when it was Syria and we were like, no, we should not take them in. We were clearly recognizing that a lot is going on in that country, but we're also saying, but hey, let's not take them in because they're all thugs and gangs. And it's just like, you know, I thought that was part of our thing. Hey, if they are here seeking asylum, then we should hear them out. But now I can at least concede for the sake of what you're trying to say if someone is coming over, say from Mexico or say from a country where we clearly know, hey, you're not in any imminent danger, or at least you're not able to show this imminent danger by the point of your crossing. Because I'm also not going to presume someone who can't speak our language knows exactly our laws to determine whether or not something is illegal or illegal or an authorized checkpoint or not. Um, but I do think, okay, and that's another reason why this immigration reform really should go to Congress and not to the president, so that we can determine what is a clear illegal crossing. But if that is determined, then yes, let's use that to make sure we're not bringing in people who are, crossing by what we have termed to be clearly illegally. But if we are so focused on, hey, we just want to deport everyone and we're just going to presume everyone is an illegal crossing unless you show us otherwise, then you got to give them an opportunity to show us otherwise.
Yeah. So, so let's talk about this extorted judgment, justice thing, because I don't know that we've even talked about this yet. But I'm concerned about the extortion of law firms. I haven't heard a single
I'm concerned
commentator.
about the extortion of medical doctors, but let's see. We talk about both of them a little bit because RFK is doing quite it's quite some work in that area. But yeah, go ahead.
But what I'm amazed that I haven't heard yet a single commentator call what Trump was doing with the law firms and his executive orders to keep them from being able to have an access to classified information or having a security clearance in order to defend their clients. I haven't heard anybody call that extortion. And to me, it seems like it's clearly extortion. It's you either do what I'm asking you to do, and you refrain from doing things that you know that I won't like. Otherwise, I'm going to penalize you for it. To me, that's extortion. And so now you got all of these attorneys who are afraid to even cross or even prosecute Trump when he does something wrong. I thought the other day, I said, boy, Trump is really beating America. When I say beating, I'm saying he's winning. He's not winning the American people, but he's conquering America. He's loaded the Justice Department with a bunch of sycophants. He has now stacked the judge with, I mean, the Supreme Court with a couple of other people or similar people who hopefully will eventually grow a spine and say, hey, we can't allow these things to happen. But he's been given a lot of leeway from this Supreme Court, and particularly in regards to being charged criminally with some things. Now he's not even going to, even if he got charged criminally, he would not have any attorneys or not many of the biggest law firms, the ones who would actually take on a case like this and who have the finances to take on cases like this. They won't they won't bring a charge against him because they know that their firm will be uh, suffer incredible harm as a result. That's extortion to me. And then you start looking at it now. Recently, yesterday, I think it was this judge in a circuit court judge in Wisconsin, Dugan, was arrested publicly and carried out of the courthouse in handcuffs. I believe is what the images was, and I think one of the some member of the administration posted the picture of it. And this woman, Judge Dugan, she was, I guess, was holding a session. There was an illegal immigrant that was in her court at that point, and there was a plainclothes federal agent who actually went into the courtroom. I think that was on the 18th of April, intending to arrest this Mexican immigrant because they had an ICE warrant for him being illegally here. He was going to be deported, but at the time, I think the judge wound up. She was informed of the presence of the person of the plainclothes agent and her judge, and became visibly angry and thought this is absurd. So she left the judge. She left the courtroom and eventually escorted the immigrant out of her courtroom. And they say to evade. The FBI said it was to evade and to obstruct justice because the ICE agents were planning to arrest the immigrant there, and she didn't want this immigrant to get arrested in her courtroom, or at least in the courthouse, and so she escorted them out through the jury room at some point. And so now you got the judges now being extorted and or being intimidated to even rule against or to try to stop Trump from being an autocrat in this country. And so I'm saying he's beating America. The Democrats can't do anything right now because if they did, when they did, it seemed to backfire on them. Republicans won't bring any impeachment charges against them because they know that they will be primaried. So right now, it looks to me like he's beating America by extorting justice. Any person who actually opposes him uh, suffers the potential for public embarrassment, debarment, bankruptcy, primary, you name it, whatever. And I think it's honestly, I have to say, it's brilliant. It's brilliant in its diabolicalism. So
I was gonna say, I mean, it's such fascism.
yeah.
I definitely agree that America is losing. I definitely agree America's losing. I would draw the line on this expectation that lawyers are the ones that need to lead the charge. And the reason why I say this because, and this is back to a little bit of your earlier point when you highlighted capitalism. Lawyers are here to advocate for clients, to advocate for the business or individuals or whatnot. And so, if those businesses or individuals are not taking a stand, to expect a lawyer to go against their client's interests, that's a little tough. I mean, and that goes back to just. Now, what would be just is for you to say, no, you know what? Business is important, but I draw a line when it comes to ethics or when it comes to morality or when it comes to humanity. Yeah, that would be the just thing to do. But even that is dependent on your moral compass because from a capitalism standpoint, the just thing would be, hey, no, if your business is saying, I need you to make sure that my interest is heard and maintained, then the just thing would be to follow along so that your clients are not hurt by virtue of what the administration does. But I am trying to lean more into these businesses. Why, again, I applaud Harvard for saying, you know what, no. And they've got lawyers to support what they're trying to do. But I'm looking at more of the businesses saying, hey, you guys have got to take a stand. I don't know what it is about this administration that got people so much to a point that they feel as if, man, I will lose so much if I don't support this guy. And I say that to say I haven't seen it like this before. I mean, we've seen tons of administrations, and I have not seen businesses really lean so hard on what the government is doing to determine how they move in their policies. I just haven't seen it. And so, I mean, I guess to your point, then I guess that means Trump's winning, but I'm just saying, oh no, that means America is losing because we fight so hard for this free speech. We fight so hard for this autonomy to run our business the way we see fit. But now we're saying, no, let's do this, dictatorship in which we run it by virtue of what the government says we have to do. And we feel as if we don't follow along, our success is weakened by the government at that, and that to me is what's been so astounding is how much they're folding on their policies.
Yeah, our federalist friends and our very staunch conservative friends, maybe libertarians, would say that this is what happens when the government gets too involved in the market. When the only reason why Trump has the influence that he has right now with a lot of these companies because these businesses depend on federal money. He has these influences with the billionaires, particularly in tech and everything, because he can now pass legislation that harms them. I think Meta recently just came up with this antitrust lawsuit, and there's some benefit that they have for currying favor with Donald Trump. I'm not sure of all the details behind it, but these people realize that policy that the government can write at this point can either make or break their business. When Trump came into the office and started his own crypto thing before he entered office, excuse me, one of the first things he did was made it so that the FTC could not regulate crypto for his own benefit. I'm like, wow. So there's so much that business can be influenced by the government even if it's not receiving funds from the government. And but there's still a lot of these innovators, like even like Elon Musk,
I
who's
was gonna
receiving
say his stock went down.
his
Profits
stock
went
went down
down. Profits went down. He went and had his shareholders meeting or board of meetings and said, you know what, I'm gonna step away from the government.
71% profit loss.
And so, I mean, there's a harm there too. And I think I always considered that businesses saw both. They saw, yeah, you may get some federal funding here, but at the same time, you recognize, hey, if I'm too involved, people, my consumers, will distance themselves. And that's why I'm shocked that you're no longer caring what your consumers think. And hopefully it'll turn around because that's what I'm saying. We see with Tesla, I think that his board, his shareholders are saying, get out of there, enough.
Right.
This is hurting us too much. And even with your example with Meta, one of the reasons why they're being sued is because when they took over Instagram or whatever, they're creating a monopoly on social media. And so, yeah, I don't doubt that they were saying, hey, let's get in with Trump so that we can beat any of these claims. But I'm also saying, hey, you're still losing here. And it's like you don't care that consumer because even social media, that has dropped. The number of people on Twitter, number of people on Instagram, number of Facebook has dropped since Trump's administration's takeover. So it's like, okay, so you don't care about the consumers as much anymore because of this federal funding that you're getting. And even then, we're in such a deficit, he's going to cut that at some point. I mean, that's not even a lasting power. And so
Yeah.
I'm just in awe. I'm in awe.
The bad thing, I think, unfortunately, I think the thing that's determining what's just is the almighty dollar. I think that's what's eventually because it determines what we do that and how we interact and how what we accept, what we do not accept, what we fight against, what we don't fight against, and who we engender and who we curry favor with and who we don't. It all boils down to the mighty dollar. And I don't know that. I think justice is distorted by money. To say it earlier, maybe it was our ambition, but you said differently. It's like whether I benefit from it. If I don't benefit from it, then is it necessarily just, or do we view it as being just? And I think it boils down to the money. Am I benefiting from it? And if I'm not, then it's not just to me. If somebody else is benefiting more than I am, then that's not just.
And
And
yet, at the
I hate to
beginning
use
of
that
this
as a measure.
podcast, I was going to say at the beginning of this podcast, you were all optimistic about, oh, but the world is going to turn around.
Oh no, I never thought I don't think the world going to turn around. I just think that we should adjust our response to the world. We should expect this type of corruption. We should expect this type of evil, and not try to prevent it, but necessarily prepare for it, because we can't stay the hand of God. And that's been my position the whole way. That the way that God from the beginning created everything, He knew all these things. Man's love for money. Love of money is the root of all evils, what the scripture tells us, and that our love for money was going to be the the nidus for our downfall.
But do we speak out about it, or do we just, like you're saying, just expect it and move with the faith? Because I'm
I,
still saying we should say something, right?
what we should say and what we should do is to recruit those, that remnant of people who are going to say, "Hey, we're not going to bow to the almighty dollar." Whether the government does or not, it's a whole different thing. The government is going to do what the government's going to do. Businesses are going to do what business do. Business has one loyalty, and that's to profits at this point. But you and I always preface that saying, when I say business has no compassion, I say I have it, but business has no compassion. And so I have to make sure that as individuals, we have to reach out and we have to encourage, admonish each other to live a life that is just according to God's standard, not according to the standards of man's law or according to the standards of business practice or commerce in the United States.
Yeah, but and I know we're running out of time, but businesses are run by people. And I mean, the argument that often goes into the courts, back to the Hobby Lobby decision, in which they were saying, "Hey, I'm not going to pretty much recognize gay marriage in my insurance or whatnot, or in my, some of that stuff," and was using their mission statement to say that. And I know that's a lot of companies are doing. You're turning your company into somewhat a level of conscious, and if even if you're talking to the individuals, if Jamal Bryant and others are saying let's boycott Target, and we see Target affected by that, then maybe to your point, okay, now your profits are affected. Now it's time for you to have a conscience. I don't know what,
Right.
but I'm still saying, but then we should still speak out and speak out even to that business, because it may make a change.
It
I
may.
just don't, I just don't want the resign to be, hey, listen, it's all about money. And if you can't find a way to monetize your message, then you're out of luck. Because I mean, even with a lot of these immigrants, they're not going to necessarily bring money directly to you, but you speak out because the oppression, the harm is morally, humanity, whatever, wrong. And so, I mean, again, I know we're out of time, but I just, yeah, I agree that, making money is important, but there should be a line in which you say, okay, listen, first of all, even the value of the dollar is decreasing drastically. At some point, you got to say, listen, I know I could probably make something doing sending this way, but I will lose so much more if I don't say something.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our humanity is now even being dictated by the dollar. And you're like, well, I can't be humane like this because I'm unwilling to suffer the losses that it occurs. Even with we talk about the whole Bud Light thing, that was probably the most evident big turnaround that I've ever seen. Simply because they put a gay person on a beer can at some point, and then the boycotts come, and they're like, "Oh,
Well, and I don't
we
know if
don't
it was
support
gay. It
gays
was
anymore, or
transgender. I don't know if
transgender, or whatever it was."
it
And
was.
he, she was, they were, whatever. Uh, but what happens is that people people will make determinations about what is right and what is not right based off of how it impacts them financially.
But even in that example, and again, I may not agree with the manner by which, but people still spoke up. And that's why I'm saying speak up. Because obviously Bud Light thought, hey, this is going to generate more profits. And it may have generated definitely some exposure. I don't know about the profits. But then people said, no, I'm going to speak up. And that's what I'm also then asking, because then it made them say, hey, we have a moral issue here. Let's talk about it. The same, I remember when Pepsi, when they had Kendall Jenner sit there and sip a Coke and make it seem like Coke all of a sudden resolved the issues between police brutality and Black people. And Pepsi got huge backlash because people said something. And so that's then what I'm saying, hey, saying something does then force that business to then be more reflective.
But it
And
doesn't force a government, though. So,
well, and
yeah.
perhaps if business says something to the government, because again, I hope Harvard won't be the only one saying no. I hope
Mm.
it, and I hope the Supreme Court, now that they have taken on this case, they've entered into their temporary bar. I hope that they also say, okay, now we've looked at this act and we're saying no. If enough people start saying no, even if that means the change of the face of government means Trump won't be there anymore, fine. But it means some change will happen.
Well, I like to see your glass half full. And if we spent the last hour trying to fill it halfway at least, then we have made some progress.
People. So the people will show me, Sonia. Well, hopefully you guys are commenting and let us know what you think about this topic. As you know, we are here every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Facebook Live. You can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed there. And you can catch a repeat on this episode on K-Day Live as well as Star Radio. And hopefully you're also following us on your favorite podcast platforms. So until next Saturday, I hope you guys have a blessed week and make sure you see the glass half full for the sake of Dr. Williams. Thank you so much and take care.